Hey guys, it's Melboy5, and this is part 2 of my response to TheCrimsonTaco's review of Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess. As I said in part 1, this part will be about his other complaints. Let's start with his first complaints. The story was bland. Now, you don't really, explain this complaint of why you think the story is bland, so I can't really understand why you say that. But as Rabbid Luigi and Fawful's Minion said in their top 10 Legend of Zelda games, Twilight Princess has a lot of plot twists in it, which definitely makes the player get interested in the story because they wonder what's going to happen next. And Twilight Princess, as mentioned before, is pretty dark compared to the other games, so that also is another reason why the story could get interesting for the player. Next complaint is the art style is terrible because it's a mix between Ocarina and whatever, in your own words. Well, first of all, saying that an art style in the game is bad is kind of more of an opinion than an actual flaw. Because, you think it's bad, but that doesn't necessarily mean it is bad. You know what I mean? And, well, and Twilight Princess is doing its own thing. It's not like a mix between any other style. It's just supposed to be a realistic looking Zelda game. The next complaint is the music is MIDI quality and just sounded awful. Okay, so I'm not an expert in music, so I don't really know what MIDI means. But like with art style, saying that music is bad is more of an opinion than an actual flaw with the game. I mean, I personally don't like opera music, but that doesn't mean the music itself is actually bad. You even, compliment some of those songs in the game, you compliment Blizzard's theme, City in the Sky theme, Hyrule Castle theme, and Ganon's theme. And there are personally quite a few songs in this game that I like Hyrule Field theme because I think it's really catchy, Stalwell's theme because I think it's really fitting for the battle, Sand Battle because again I think it's really fitting, and obviously the best song in the game, Mithra's Laments, because it's so good. If you haven't heard it, listen to it now because it is amazing, at least in my opinion. Next complaint is Hyrule Field had nothing in it. Well, that is simply untrue, in that Hyrule Field has, in Twilight Princess, Hyrule Field has heart pieces, the bugs when I go for side quests, secret areas, and a lot of enemies, while in, Ocarina of Time, which is one of the two games you keep constantly saying in the review about how you love, and Ocarina of Time's Hyrule Field is merely just a flat bit of ground, with only stall children at night, occasionally a Fiat, and one or two secret areas. I mean, I know and I can understand your argument about you say Hyrule Field's much bigger, but as it got bigger, it got a lot more lively and a lot more interesting, at least in my opinion. And next one you say is the sword flailing was whack. Okay, well that's kind of more of your own fault, no offense, because you were reviewing the Wii version where you swing the Wii remote to make Link swing the sword, so if the sword flailing was whack, then it's more likely you were just swinging the Wii remote all over the place. It's kind of like how everybody says the motion controls in Skyward Sword don't work, even though it's probably more likely that they're probably just swinging it around all over the place so that the game can't register it. Next complaint, wolf form is tacked on. Okay, again, you don't really explain this complaint, and you don't even bring it up in the review, you only brought it up in the comments, so I don't really understand why you think it's tacked on, but I definitely feel the wolf form is very, interesting and different, to the point where, not many people are gonna think it's just a pointless gimmick. Like, I personally think that the wolf form is more interesting than all the masks and Majora's Mask combined. I mean, again, in my opinion. But to me, the wolf form being tacked on is kind of all the same thing as saying the Ocarina of Time or the Wind Waker were tacked on in their respective games. And now we get up to probably what's going to take up the majority of this video, the characters. Okay. First of all, you talk about like how you don't like the NPCs. Well, first of all, they are like minor NPCs, so they don't really have any importance to the story, so I don't really see much of reason to complain about them. Even though I do agree with you that some of them are hideous. Anyway, then you move on to the plot important characters. First up is Link. Now, your main complaint with Link is that, like, despite him being obviously an Avatar character who doesn't talk, you complain about how he has, like, some, like, weird reactions and, like, goofy faces at certain points. Well, with the weird reactions, though, is that in your review, you kind of, like, put them in, like, places where we kind of put them like out of context, which makes them like, you know, makes it harder to like understand what is actually going on. Because like if you look at those parts in context with the situation, they make a lot more sense. And the goofy faces, though, I do admit there are some times where Link has some really funny faces and faces that don't really make any sense, but this does give Link more character, and I would rather have Link having a bit of a character despite being an Avatar character than have him like no character at all and be like a block of woods. Next character, Zelda. Now, your main complaint with Zelda is that you say she doesn't do anything. Well, again, that's kind of untrue because she, like, when you first meet her, she tells Link, like, how, like, Hyrule ended up becoming covered in twilight and that, which obviously lets Link and the player know, like, what is going on, because if she wasn't there for that purpose, then we would still probably kind of be confused later on in the game. And she also tells Link about, like, needing to get the Master Sword and needing to get rid of the curse that had him stuck in his wolf form after being in the first dungeon. Plus, also, there are also Zelda games where Zelda doesn't have much of a role, like, even less of a role than Twilight Princess, where, like in Majora's Mask, where she only appears in a flashback. And there are some Zelda games where Zelda doesn't even appear at all, like in Link's Awakening. Okay. Now, next character, Ilia. Now, you mainly say that Ilia only exists to get the plot going because her and the other children from Link's village get kidnapped. I do definitely agree that I don't really see much point in Ilia existing as a character because she doesn't really have much point in the story, but she doesn't just exist to get the plot going. There is like a whole like part of the game where you try to get her memory back after she loses it. And then, like, you also complain about, like, how it's like she's supposed to be, like, a love interest thing, and it's like, well, isn't Zelda supposed to fill that role? Well, it's more like, with the way, like, the interactions that, like, Link and Ilia have in the game, it's more like a childhood friendship than an actual, like, love story sort of thing. And with Zelda, though, it's not like, again, you said before, she doesn't have much of a role, there's not really any point in having her being a love interest. And the only character in Twilight Princess I ever thought actually was the closest to an actual love interest was Mithra, but they only hinted it at like the end of the game. Next character, Zance. Now, Zance is definitely an interesting character because through the time when the game came out, he was the kind of character you'd never expect to see in a Zelda game. Zance basically acts obviously like any like famous movie psychopath. Like, he acts all calm, and then when you get to like the final like stand up against him, he was fucking nuts. And well, your main complaint with Zant is more that like how Ganondorf is the main villain, and I do see where you're coming from, and I do partially agree with you. There wasn't really any point to have Ganondorf be the villain of this game. It would have been perfectly fine if they had Zant as the main villain. But I don't see how this makes Zant a bad character, though, because Ganondorf being the main villain has nothing to do with Zant's character. Second of all, like you complain about how like weird Zant gets when he goes nuts. That's more sort of like to represent that, like, you know, it's partially to represent that he's not worthy of like the throne of the Twilight Realm, but it's also sort of to show that like every one of his attempts so far to kill Link, or at least get rid of him, have failed. So he's probably gone like nuts because how many times he's failed, and this is basically like his last chance. So he probably wants to go all out on him. And this even shows in like his boss fight, where you get to the last part of the fight and he goes like crazy with like really fast attacks and teleporting all over the place, because it shows that he really wants Link dead. And then obviously last character, and probably what pissed me off the most about your review personally, was Mithra. Mithra is one of my favorite characters in the entire Zelda series. So when you started saying she was a bad character, I was instantly like, you have a lot of explaining to do. And personally, I don't think your explanation was very good. Your main reason for why you say Mithra is a bad character is because she becomes selfless. Because, like, when she becomes selfless after Zelda sacrifices herself to save Mithra. Now, this doesn't really make any sense to me, because one, you're basically saying she's bad for having character development, and then she's like she has the most character development of like any character in the series. And second of all, if you like were looking at, if you were paying enough attention to the dialogue in that situation, Mithra was already selfless before Zelda sacrificed herself. If you were reading the dialogue, then she was like, she didn't, like, when she was almost dead, she didn't give a shit about herself. She was asking Zelda, like, how to get rid of the curse on Link. She wasn't caring about herself. And even when Zelda was sacrificing herself, she says, and I quote, "No, Link, stop her," again, because she would rather have herself die than to have Zelda sacrifice herself, which again, that is selfless. And now when she's like almost dying, that's the first time she actually calls Link by his name. And then like your other is that like he's saying like how she's like a jerk to Link at the beginning of the game. It's like, well, this is like the ruler of the Twilight Realm. Why? So that must mean she's a dick to her own people. Well, no. When you enter the Twilight Realm, Mithra says that Mithra asks Link if she can still hide in shadow like he does in the Light World, because she says that if her people saw that the only help they had was a little imp, they feel let down. So again, she does care about her people, and just because she's being a jerk to the people in the World of Light doesn't mean she's a jerk to her own people. I just don't really understand your complaints with Mithra, because it's basically just saying she's bad because she has character development. And even like long after Zelda sacrifices herself, you still see that she feels bad about using Link, and she feels bad. She just like really regrets everything she did before Zelda sacrificed herself. So that really brings me to the end of all the complaints of this. And again, like, it's fine, like, if you don't like this game, because for some reason you still don't believe me when I say that, but again, it's fine if you don't like this game. That is entirely fine. But if you're going to make a video about why you think this game's bad, you should come up with better complaints, because the only, like, you say, like, people think that, like, Twilight Princess is the best Zelda game. I definitely agree. I definitely disagree with that. I don't think Twilight Princess is the best Zelda game, and I do agree that Twilight Princess does have its own problems, because, like, because there are quite a lot of similarities to Ocarina of Time, even though this personally didn't bother me, just because I felt like Twilight Princess did a lot different to make itself feel different from Ocarina of Time, while also having a lot of references to it. And the only big complaint I really have with Twilight Princess is how the beginning is very boring and tedious, but it gets better after that, for me. It's like, because, like, if you're going to make, like, a review for this, you're going to have to focus on the gameplay and the plot, not the bosses, and briefly bring up other points. It's like, I personally don't like the Wonderful 101, but obviously if I'm going to make a video about it, I'm going to actually, like, try and bring up some, like, good complaints about it. Like, obviously if I did make a video about why I don't like the Wonderful 101, I'm not gonna, like, make fun of the fans for liking the game, because that's another reason probably why you got a lot of dislikes, was because you were making fun of the fans for liking the game, even though it's your opinion of you not liking it, so you shouldn't really be making fun of them. Anyway, that brings me to the end of this response. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time for my next response video.